Hello. I've read Eric Roberts' new memoir. Eric Roberts with Sam Kashner, Runaway Train, or The Story of My Life So Far. We have a picture of Eric on the front and one on the back, where he does look a little bit like an old woman. He says at one point that older men kind of tend to look like old women. And well, it does happen. So Eric Roberts, yeah, Eric Roberts is this is very much an older man's memoir. This is really a lot of looking back through an entire life. He was born in 1956, I believe. He's maybe 5 years younger than I am, so he's getting to be 70. And he's, looking back at what happened, and he had a very interesting life with a lot of work and a lot of difficulties. He was born of young parents. He was the first child I was going to look up how old the parents were. Maybe I can do that right now. But yeah, his mom was like 20 years old, 21 years old when he was born. And his dad was a little older, I guess. And so he was an only child for many years. Julia being born sometime later, and another sister called Lisa, and then another half-sister after mom remarried someone else. He was born in the South, primarily raised in Atlanta, I believe. His his parents were involved in the arts, in theater. They were interested in theater and drama. And they had some kind of acting school, some kind of little theater troupe back there in Atlanta. So that's really where Eric started and how he got into. So essentially, he's in the family business, as of course is his more and more famous sister, Julia Roberts, who came along sometime later. He's 11 years older than Julia. So really kind of from a whole different family. I was 6 years older than my brother, and I think I ended up having lots of traits of kind of an only child. And Eric doesn't really speak of that so much, but, he is he did, kind of grow up as an only child for many years before, and then was taken with his father when the parents split. The girls went with mom, and they were very young, and Eric, who I think was a teen at the time, stayed with dad. So he wanted to get out of Atlanta, out of all that. He was in plays when he was a kid. As I said, his parents had this little acting troupe. They actually had according to him, the Martin Luther King children were enrolled in the school. So he had some interaction with King's children, and because the parents were interested in having this integrated school. They were liberal type people in the South. In the 1960 or wherever this was going on, early 60s, when everything was kind of brewing with, the civil rights, that wave of the civil rights movement and so forth. So he had a difficult relationship with both of his parents. His mother, he has his mother hitting him with dowel rods and various sizes of, what dowels are. They're pieces of wood, round pieces of wood, a dowel. And apparently his mother kept these around the house in certain places, and he would be beat with them when he was naughty for some reason. So he didn't really like his mom at all, and ultimately did not like his dad either when he talks about moving to New York finally when he was very young. He got the money together to, like working in some kind of, regular working class job, and got out of Atlanta and went to New York and got an apartment in New York. This is, in the late, in the 70s. So he's in New York and he's getting all these letters, like long letters, like 5-page letters, like every day from his dad. And he reproduces some of that part of it, I think, was not really completely fleshed out in the book, in that, he said there was this problem. He gave excerpts of the letters, and you can see this dad's kind of controlling, kind of bossing him around and so forth. But this had quite an impact on Eric, and kind of freaked him out, and really did not like this. And and then his dad, well, why didn't you answer me? Why didn't you answer my letters? While he's kind of trying to have a life in New York and busy, and dad's wanting him to respond and giving him lectures on. There's one of them talking about what women are like and things like that, and just things that trying to be a dad with these instructions, but going overboard and controlling and so forth. So he didn't really like his dad either. So there's this certain atmosphere of alienation building around young Eric. There's a part of it that isn't really all that fleshed out with the dad. Apparently his dad had some kind of a plot that he pulled Eric into to murder his young wife, his father's young wife, who apparently had money, and in some sort of place in the sun, American tragedy, whatever kind of a thing. This woman died on a boat. A canoe. There was a lake, and Eric and the woman went out in the canoe on a lake, and she didn't wear a life vest, and another boat swamped them, and she drowned, even though Eric was a good swimmer. So that story isn't really kind of very well told, and I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out more of that, I guess. And the book could have used that to build a lot more drama. And more reason to, of all the angst and the pain and the issues with his dad. But anyway, it was a funny little story, odd little story, really. Right away, he has really, serious success in New York. He gets into a couple of plays. He's doing something at the with Joseph Papp, Rebel Woman or something, I think is his first play that he talked about that he was in, and then he ends up landing this movie when he's about 19 years old, the King of the Gypsies, and he talks about working with quite old then Sterling Hayden and other people in the cast. Is a really impressive cast with Shelley Winters was always also in it too. When he's just starting out, he has an affair with Sandy Dennis. Sandy Dennis was another actor of the 50s, 60s, basically. And she was 20 years older than he. She lived in a house in Connecticut and had a lot of cats. So Sandy Dennis was a cat lady. It didn't work out, he said, because of his cocaine thing. So I read a complaint on IMDb, not on IMDb, Goodreads, the one for books, that somebody complained about they gave it 1 star, and it just wasn't enough about the movie. So he says, not enough about one Runaway Train, for instance, the movie that the book is titled from, sort of, but it's not really that kind of a book. It's not so much all about the movies. And besides, he's got so many movies. Eric, he does say in this that he is, basically the hardest working actor in America, and I believe it. He has, as of now, I just looked, 850 acting credits in movies and TV shows and things like that. I guess music videos or whatever. So that's really a lot. And he talks about how he sometimes goes from one set to another, or on a day, on one particular day. So and he talks a good deal about drugs and drug addictions, and he came to New York as I said, in the 70s there, and so he was all involved with the show business of the 70s and 80s, where everyone, according to him and other stories you hear, you would go on sets and go to the prop truck and get your cocaine for the day and things like that. So he was a pretty serious cocaine addict for many years, and he talks about how that has disrupted his relationship with family, with his sisters, with Julia primarily, and some things he's said along the way that alienated her. And the thing about his mother, like when he was being interviewed for King of the Gypsies, whatever, they would ask about his mother, whatever, and she would say, well, she's dead, just sort of cutting to the chase, making it easier for him. But, the other family was a little offended by that stuff. But he was alienated from his mother, didn't see her for many, many years. There's a lot of this kind of alienation going on with certain people who get freaked out by him, step away, and, are hesitant to come back, don't come back, or come back many, many years later, as is the case of his stepson named Keaton, who is a musician, who didn't talk to him for 16 years. Speaking of relationships, he has this very long-term relationship with his wife, Elsa, is that her name? Eliza? Elisa, Eliza, Eliza Roberts. His wife was an actor. She's in Animal House and apparently some other things, back in the 80s, so forth. And apparently still acts some now. And they were married, I think 1990, around there, 1991. And so they've been married all this time. And, he talks about the relationship a lot and how it's gone back and forth. And like the memoir for Frank Zappa, Moon Unit's memoir, with Gail managing the business for Frank Zappa, ultimately, we have Eliza running the business for Eric Roberts. She's a casting director. She's his manager. She, is taking care of everything. And he just goes from job to job and job and does what he tells her to do. And she manages to keep him employed and keep him going. Why is he workaholic? He says he admits it's addictive. It's addiction to work addiction. It's a compensation. It's an addiction that is, somewhat more positive than the cocaine addiction, for instance. Of course, it is possible, and what happened was, a lot of these people worked on cocaine as well as doing their movies and everything. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with cocaine, but, I follow Paul Schrader, the great screenwriter and director Paul Schrader, who also has this cocaine thing from the 80s, and he talks about, well, the first, let people tell you that it's not like all bad. The first 2 years on cocaine is great, apparently, and you can get a lot of stuff done and everything happens. And, you know, I think a lot of these people took it, had an advantage over the people who weren't when they were all, you know, as the buddy thing of drug buddies and everything else. It creates a whole network of involvement and hyped up work. And so much of the things we've experienced in entertainment come from people who were high on cocaine, like David Bowie's material from what, 70s, 80s, whatever. I mean, you know, he ended up dying rather young of a heart attack or, well, cancer, but you know, Eric Roberts has managed to survive uh, up until this point. So he talks about the addiction to cocaine, and then how apparently right around sometime in the 90s he was able to stop that and not do that. Then there's other things that come in and out, like pharmaceuticals and so forth. But an interesting thing about this book, and what you don't find in a lot of other books that have to do with drug, or stories that have to do with drug addiction and so forth, he really calls out marijuana and as an addictive issue and a problem. And I'm here to testify that that is a real fact for some of us. He says, you know, as to being sober otherwise, he basically is only doing, you know, he smokes pot still, uses pot still. So, you know, he says like a joint and a half a day, and I'm like, a joint and a half a day, that's that's like nothing, you know. So anyway, you know, there's a lot of stuff about that, and a lot of regrets about his issues with drugs and how they messed up jobs for him, how he had anger issues and control issues on the set. I think his wife, he talks about his wife referring to him as a sort of or low-level narcissist, which I've been called a narcissist as well, so I understand that. And, you know, maybe that's just a function of being an only child for 6 to 11 years, whatever. But I think it's a really good memoir. I quite liked it, or autobiography, whatever you want to call it. It is. I thought it was really good, and you know, I feel like I got to know a little more about Eric Roberts. And as far as being the hardest working man in show business, or actor in show business, I'm not really much of an actor. You know, I've done some stuff, and you know, got into it like when I was like, you know, New York acting didn't really start till I was in my 50s, whatever, and did it for a few years. But even me, I've been in 2 scenes with Eric Roberts, all within the past, you know, like 15 years or so. One was with Shannon Plum, where she was doing a scene, shooting a big scene in this bank that she was going to use for, you know, a proposal trying to get a film going. I haven't heard anything about that yet, but Eric played the bank robber, and he comes in, and I'm a guy that comes out of an office with a tray of donuts, and he holds the gun on me, and it's comedy, and the donuts go up in the air and down over my head and all that. And then during the pandemic, another friend asked me to do a little piece of a feature. So I also appear in a subway scene with Eric, and we did a selfie. And I had a few words with him on the set, waiting to go on, and he told me something personally. So, you know, there you go. Eric Roberts is out and about, and if anybody is an actor, they probably worked with Eric Roberts, or he's been in a movie that he's been in. So yeah, he talks about, back to the pot thing, an interesting thing that he says in his side, but he doesn't give a reference to where we can find this. He talks about Norman Lear's ex-wife, who had mental problems and various, drugs she took and so forth, and ended up she was a long-term marijuana user, and she had stopped, cannabis user, and she had stopped, and these problems cleared up. So I thought that was an interesting little point, and I don't know. I'd be interested in reading that. Maybe I'm not sure which one. I looked that up a little bit, but didn't find any other references to that. There's a lot of illustrations in the book, some black and white photos, a lot of color photos, a family, some stuff on the set, some of other actors and so forth. It has a full index at the end, so it's a real book, and therefore it's a viable product as an actual. It's not just a movie star book. And it's really good. He talks about working on Star 80. Now, Star 80 was a major movie for me as far as really liking. I'm going to talk about the movies either. Actually, most of the movies he's done, even some very, very big ones, I have not watched because I really don't watch that many movies. I guess I'm more interested in the story of an actor, that works that hard. And, I liked some of the stuff that he's done in the past. I liked him in the Righteous Gemstones. He talks about that and being sad that he was only did one season and wasn't brought back. But Star 80 with Bob Fosse is a really particularly great movie, and he talks about doing that and talks about working with Fosse, who he said was a methadone addict, with a meth addict, which is you ever watch All That Jazz? Showtime, and that's the way it was, and that's what these people did, and that's how they burnt the candle at both ends and did all this big stuff and moved all these people around and made all this thing happen. And so yeah, he said he did Star 80, and it was very rough, and but he said that like in the murder scene in the movie, there's a murder in Star 80, if you don't know. He said that Fosse just choreographed every single move of the thing. It was not an improv in any kind of a way. So he talks about other people that Christopher Walken is a friend of his, and he doesn't really talk about having friends. He says he doesn't really have friends, and that it's hard to have friends when he's a famous person like that, because it attracts people who are kind of not really capable of being your friend, because first they're in awe of this thing they've seen on the screen or whatever, and a lot of he can be pulled into scenes with people. Oh, here's some drugs, that kind of a thing, and so they're just another drug buddy and stuff like that. So I think he kind of is wary of friends, so forth. But he's nice to me, and we did a selfie, and yeah, I think this was a really a good memoir. I really liked it. I burnt through it really quick. It's 160 pages, 260 pages long, and yeah, very personal, I think, and very good in that way, and honest, and it makes me like Eric Roberts even more as a person. I'm not the. I don't know if I'll ever be invited to work with him again. Both projects where I worked with him, I was invited. I wasn't auditioned. It was just people I knew who knew what work I was capable of doing. So that's how that happened. It made me think about acting, and would I want to try to do that some more? And it's like it's just such a pain in the butt, really. And I trying to get roles and auditioning, and a lot of the stuff you end up being in is just not kind of not worthy of the time to put into it. So I guess that's why I just stick to, modeling and being in paintings, whatever, as a, in a kind of hourly wage, and sit and stare at the wall. And, it seems, and, I end up, I'm in like, you know, hundreds and hundreds of images that people have made. I don't know if they paint over them or throw them away, or if they're just in storage somewhere. But there's a lots of Steves out there somewhere, like there's lots of Erics in all the movies. So yeah, I think that's what I got right now.